Thank you very much, Annie, and thank you very much to everyone who is in the audience and is using us perhaps as their lunch break, because I realize that for most people in Europe, it's going to be that sort of time. So welcome to this session. As Annie introduced it, we are going to look at how AI and automation can help in redesigning how telco operates, and whether it can be a boost to profitability that the telcos have long been searching for. So we have a panel of 4 people today. We have Goran, Alexis, Christos, and João. And I will ask you all to come on camera and introduce yourselves and also introduce your job and how that relates to the topic of our panel today. So perhaps starting with you, Goran.
Thank you. I'm Goran Klepac. I'm working as Director of Big Data Analytics in Croatian Telekom, mostly involved in AI projects and predictive analytics in big data environment. And in last period, mostly interesting in customer experience and connecting technical stuffs and all around the technical way of operators with connectivity with the customer experience.
Thank you, Goran. João, do you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, glad to be here. Pleasure. So I'm João Antunes. I'm heading the autonomous network at Celfocus. Essentially, what I do is to help CSPs getting in effective strategies towards autonomy. So we all know we were talking about before. So level 4, level 5 is a big goal. And so I help them with do a little bit of pre-sales, also end-to-end architecture, and help to define that roadmap.
Thank you, João. And sorry for damaging your name. It's João, not João.
A bit hard to pronounce, no problem.
Hi, Christos. So tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah. Hi, Emma. Hello, everybody. I'm Christos Koimtzis, Business Development Manager working for Deutsche Telekom. I've been around telco industry for almost 20 years. Had the privilege to work in different roles, operational engineering, solution architecture, and recently I've joined the business side. I'm leading the AI activities for Telekom Klepac, which is the business unit responsible for international connectivity. So I'm excited to be here, and many thanks to Mobile Europe and the organizers for inviting me to this panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Christos. And last but not least, we have Alexis.
Thank you. Hello, Emma. Hello, everybody. So I'm Alexis Koalla. So I'm working at Orange, and I'm Director of Operation Strategy and Transformation. I'm leading the operation model transformation and supporting all the affiliates of Orange to evolve and step in Orange operation transformation by leveraging AI and all the technologies and tools.
Thank you very much. So let's get started. So we are looking at the impact of AI and automation as well as STL partners and how it can help the telco in their quest for better profitability. So we have modeled what the benefit of deploying automation and what AI and automation in particular in the network and the OSS processes could be for an average telco. And we have calculated that the financial benefit an average telco can get from those methods is about the equivalent of 5% of the operator annual revenue. So obviously, a lot of that financial benefit is going to be in cost savings, and I'm sure we'll be discussing those at length in this panel. And there's also 15% of that 5%, so I'll let you do the maths, which would come from a revenue uplift. So because the network is more intelligent, because the network reacts more quickly, it has a beneficial effect on customer experience. Again, something that we'll probably touch upon in the panel. So I will start perhaps my first question, just an easy one, and it would be one for you, Goran, because it is something we discussed during our preparation for the panel. You and in fact other panelists kept saying that there can be a bit of a confusion between traditional AI and generative AI and how these two can be used in the network and the OSS. So perhaps you can give us an example to bring it to life of how predictive AI has been used traditionally in the network and how generative AI perhaps is overlaid, put on top to deliver. I think the English phrase is the icing on the cake, but I think you use the cherry on the cake, which is a phrase I also recognize from my mother tongue.
Okay, thanks. Yes, this era, I would say, is the era of customer experience. You know that every company in general, some company doesn't have any kind of infrastructure, but they are providing some services in this area. In telecom business, we are providing some services, but also we have to take care about the customer experience. And when we are talking about the generative AI, you cannot expect that from LLM models that you will get the answers, for example, that they will give you an information how your customer is satisfied with your services. It's out of mind because you have to analyze and to use all those data in way to prepare those data to use, I would say, traditional way of predictive modeling, some kind of fuzzy logic, some kind of Bayesian networks, whatever. Prepare the data to express by some kind of mathematical function. What does it mean, for example, that you have deterioration in your services? From technical point of view, it doesn't mean that you have some troubles, but customer can feel that something went wrong. Even by technical parameters, everything is perfect. And when you can describe that with some technical mathematical models, you have to provide this information to LLM model, and then end users which are making decision can be in place that they can make some kind of decision to communicate with those things. And they can, for example, in LLM ask in which area we have some kind of bad customer experience and why. And all of those models which is behind the scene are working his work. They prepare the data and prepare some kind of information. And this is the cherry on the top in which this, I would say, generative AI should be looked for.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's a good way of explaining it. Thank you very much, Goran. Thank you. So I think it's fair to say some form of artificial intelligence obviously has been used in network for the past 10 or 15 years. And most operators worldwide would have some sort of AI at play somewhere in their networks. So I would be interested to hear from the panel, and really the question goes to all of you here. What are the use cases that are of most interest at this precise moment in time? And on the previous panel, we have discussed, for instance, that 2025 is going to be the year of 5G SA, for instance. So what are the use cases that are of most interest at the moment, and what specific challenges does that throw for the continued progress of AI and automation in lifecycle management? So a big question. I'm happy to perhaps start with you, João, if you're okay to
I can start probably. So as we are also discussing core and also Goran also talked about the large quantities of data. And this is a little bit a challenge now because in the yesterdays we had a turnkey network, right? So it was provided by a vendor. If we had problems, we went to that vendor and said, this is not working correctly, so here's my problem, you need to fix it. Today, with this aggregation of networks, we are a little bit more flexible, having a flexible network that is more also complex to use, but more flexible to scale, right? And that turns into a problem because you now have 2 or 3 layers of network producing large amounts of data, right? So you have the infrastructure, you have virtualization if you have it, you have VNFs, CNFs running on top of that infrastructure, and all of these is producing data. And the problem is that you normally either you know that you have a problem on an infrastructure or on a pod running on the network, or you know that the customer might be having a bad experience. You cannot correlate what's happening from one layer to another. So that's one of the challenges I see. So large amounts of data need to be correlated, and you need the exact visibility of how to go from top to bottom and bottom to top. Mm-hmm. And of course, then AI enters into that game, right? Because there's a lot of data. You need the AI to understand when is my data out of the normal patterns, so that I can understand and just flash a light when someone needs to look at the problem or do some type of action. And so that's one of the key things I would say. AI can help us, and of course, the data correlation needs to be there.
Thank you, João. So I think you've shed some light on the specific challenges here. Can you give us perhaps some specific use cases that are of particular interest for AI and automation at the moment at operators? Have they changed in the past 18 months? Is there a specific focus on certain use cases?
Well, yeah, they changed a bit, probably. GenAI certainly changed a little bit of the paradigm and how CSP see AI. So GenAI is also helping us in the way that it's also augmenting the typical ML, right? Because it also enables us, for instance, to categorize data and to use typical ML algorithms using that categorized data by the NLP capabilities of GenAI. What we see as probably good use cases are the typical at this point. So anomaly detection. So for instance, you can detect from the service experience data, from usage of the customer, whether they have a typical or abnormal pattern of usage, and with that being able to detect whether it is under a normal circumstance or out of the normal circumstance, and not using a static threshold, right? Because what we want is an adaptable threshold, dynamic threshold that understands whether or not we are under the normal pattern. And then, of course, there are many more. So, and this can be applied also to data, performance data from network devices, from from the infrastructure and all of those layers of the network that I was talking about. And GenAI for sure can help us understand in everything that needs interpretation of natural language. So tapping into the incident, problem, change management, history. So all of those for sure is probably let's say the easiest way to use GenAI, although there are many others.
Thank you. And I think you might give us a little bit more examples of actually those particular use of GenAI later on in the panel. So let's keep our powder dry on that one. So do any of the other telco panelists perhaps want to give us a little bit more color on the use cases that are being developed at the moment in the organization in relation to the use of AI and automation?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Maybe. Goran, go ahead. Sorry, I will jump in.
We'll come back to you, Alexis.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry if I take you the word. Okay, just shortly, what also João mentioned. It's not about that you are just recognizing hotspots of the problems. When you have hotspots of the problems, it's pretty bad situation. It's something which is operating thing. But the fact is that customers always they expect that they will have continuous quality of the service. What you have to recognize is situation when you, from technical point of view, you have a certain, I would say, fluid of usage of some kind of services, but it has some kind of small deterioration. When you are managing something of the problems, it doesn't mean that somebody potentially can be happy. If it continuously repeated, even you are making your job good, it doesn't mean that at the end somebody will be happy because he has experienced that previously he has some troubles, even you solve to them. And all those things you can express by some kind of mathematical models and to evaluate and to make some kind of prediction when is those hotspots which you have to solve.
Alexis, perhaps coming on to you then.
Yeah, I just want to come back on the data, the layers João was sharing. AI will also enable and ease the way we are orchestrating our network domains, maybe global versus domain per domain when it comes to networks. And also it will ease a closed loop for inventory. And coming back to the data, how AI will leverage the use of data coming from different sources and heterogeneous sources is the capability of AI or GenAI to classify or categorize the different events based on the data you are gathering. You can have a neutral event, negative one, unknown or positive one. And AI will help and enable the operations team to focus on the negative or unknown event that to detect anomaly or something that is going wrong and not known, already known, and it will enable faster decision making, as Goran was saying.
Thank you, Alexis. So I noticed that you're using the future tense here.
Yeah.
So it is something under consideration, but it's not real at the moment. It is something to look forward to, right?
Yeah, it's the path. We are on this path and working really to filtering the event based on the data and building and feeding the model. We are training with 4 categories: neutral, positive, negative, and unknown. Will enable faster decision making, anticipation, and the early detection of what can come wrong in our network.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And perhaps coming to you,
Maybe-
Christos, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. Actually, to build on Goran's and Alexis' comments and João as well, for me, Gen AI offers new opportunities. It offers, let's say, new interfaces, so you can really create a dialogue between the data, even documents when we're talking about RAG implementation. And for me, what makes really the difference is that in the past, during all these AI and machine learning use cases, we needed coders, developers to work on these cases, where now we're moving to no code or low code implementation. Let's say this is like more flexible and scalable in comparison to the past. Of course, with some limitations, we may need to talk about this at a later point. And one more point that I would like to make is regarding customer experience. So João talked about the different layers. We need to find new ways to capture the customer experience based on mathematical models, as Goran said, but also try to understand better the data patterns and the behaviors of the customer. Also, there are behavioral patterns behind each individual customer. So we really need to create seamless customer experience, customer journeys for each and every individual customer. And for me, it's also very, very important to adapt this with all the processes. So one of the major problems I think is like we have in telcos environment, we have different departments, different customer touch points. So we really need a layer that creates, let's say, transparency towards the customer, but as well as, let's say, provide a tool set to the employees, as well as an interface to the customer to have a transparency across the different layers and services. So as the telco services become even more complex, I remember in the past we had like traditional telephony. So now we have the IP services, and we keep on creating new services for our customers. So this becomes much more complex. So this really makes this necessity even more important.
Thank you, Christos. So you have mentioned in the attempt of better understanding the customer experience, a number of obstacles to that. One of them was the organizational one, you're saying, really, if I understand you correctly. So the fact that because the telcos are still to some extent organized in silos, they don't necessarily speak with each other. I mean, how much that is going to change in the next few years is anyone's question, isn't it? It's there are ways to overcome that particular model by creating agile teams, for instance, that could be across the various domains. So I don't know if you have any of that, if you see any of that being developed either around AI or the automation or around other initiatives within your telco, for instance?
In our company, we're already working in cross-functional teams. We see that there are really benefits when this happens, and we bring people together coming from different backgrounds and working together and collaborate with this goal. I would like here to mention also, apart from the organizational changes that are required, I think that this is something that we will gonna see in the next years. This transformation to evolve and become bigger and bigger. It's also the people that participate. So I would like to stress here the importance of training the people, the new roles, the new teams that require new skills. use Gen AI technology. You all know that prompt engineering is very, very important in order to get a great outcome based on from the AI, especially today where the accuracy is not, let's say, the highest, and we haven't touched the AGI. So the general intelligence, and also the work for always a transformation includes a mindset shift to work on the resistance to change. We have noticed that where we work in POCs with colleagues from different departments, that there is always some resistance to change, some skepticism. Am I going to be replaced by AI? Yeah. What is the impact on my job in the future? So we really need to work on the mindset aspect as well, not only the training and the organizational setup.
Sure, thank you very much. So I'm just checking on the time, which is not on our side. So let's move on a little bit. And I also wanted to reiterate, perhaps to the audience, in fact, I haven't seen that at the beginning, there should be a Q&A box in your menu at the bottom. Please submit any question that you might have. If there are questions at the end of the session, I'll ask those questions to the panel. So I perhaps wanted to discuss a little bit more specifically about automation. We have mentioned the word automation in our discussion so far, but we have also perhaps focused a little bit more on AI. So I wanted to turn to you, Alexis, and talk about Orange's emphasis in its, I think it's called Lead the Future strategy on enhancing its network capabilities, and also your statement that the organization want to reach level 4. Autonomy by the end of next year. So can you give us a little bit of an update on how this strategy is panning out, and if you can, how it might already have affected some of your KPIs?
Yeah, thank you, Emma. So in the Lead the Future strategic plan, one of the key programs is moving autonomous network, and now it's autonomous and AI-empowered network operations, because not just automation, it's also how we leverage AI in our network operations. And today we are after several workshops with the countries affiliate. The last one was beginning of November. We are now building the roadmap of implementation with the countries, and by customizing and taking into account the constraint and also the willing and the maturity of automation and the way they are automating the infrastructure and their pipeline to deploy to roll out 5G. And by next year, the beginning of next year, we'll start with some affiliates to start implementing concretely what does it mean to automate, for instance, in change, because we are focusing on 2 processes, the change, or 2 domains of processes, if I may say, change and monitoring. By monitoring, we think about the fault management. And for change, for instance, for one KPI is how we generate automatically configuration for a specific area or equipment of the network. How do we automate? We are focusing on the accuracy to automate the configuration check to avoid rollback and some misconfiguration, the delivery and the check. This will be automated, this will be measured, and we will measure the way, the time we take to build and check all these configurations to avoid the rollback that is time consuming and energy consuming. For monitoring, here, what we are expecting on Gen AI as a KPI is the accuracy of what Gen AI will provide us an insight or capabilities. Fault identification. We have also fault analysis, fault recovery, and on-site operation for field managing and optimizing workforce management. And here we are measuring the accuracy of the Gen AI insight to be able to take the right decision at the right time and quickly to fix the issue. And we are monitoring those. These are just some example of KPI we are monitoring and where we are expecting to have a kind of savings, I may say between 15 and 30% of what we have today, to be able to improve the efficiency of our operations. Just to share with you, yeah.
So it's 15 or 30% of what? Of the time, of the OPEX, of?
For configuration, it's the time. okay? Time we take today to deploy, to build the configuration, to deploy, and so on. For monitoring, it's also the time to repair, the time to fix. So by saving, obtaining this kind of improvement, we are hopefully willing to save money, because if you are able to move faster or fix forward, you will save money every time you take and so on. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I have a question which has come in the Q&A already, but I will just stay a little bit longer on the automation topic, and then I might go to the question afterwards. I have plenty of other questions I want to ask the panel in any case, so there's no scarcity of that. João, I think during our discussion, you also mentioned in relation to automation that telcos need to have some sort of governance internally, or how employees can use the various tools in relation to automation. You know, how can they test those tools? How can they implement those tools, and so on? So I'd be interested in understanding exactly what you mean with that, and what you have found is the level of governance on that front at your telcos. I'm going to put a little bit of a question in relation to the previous panel, which I thought was super interesting when, and it is in fact relating to the question of automation as well. When Matt to me said telcos should include automation in their test phase. It needs to be in the lab, because if it's not in the lab, you're going to have to end up repairing things in the lab in the lab network. So I'm really interested in that. How aware are telcos that they might need to bring automation from the word go and have it in the lab? But perhaps first, let's start on the issue of governance, and let's unwrap that one.
So it probably connects to what Christos here was saying. So it's one of the most important things is also people and how the organization sees the change and accept the change. So one of the things that for sure it would need to happen is like he was also referring is the reskilling. So to a certain extent, the new engineer of operations needs to be a little bit AI aware, needs to be cloud aware, needs to be automation aware. And so then you need also effective strategies so that you can keep the house tidy, right? So you have several domains of network. You have RAN, you have core, you have transport, you have fixed. So all of those. So what I mean by governance and strategy is, how do I do it? So do I do an automation tool and everyone uses the same automation tool and maybe I am hindering their speed? Or do I say, no, each domain does its own thing and then I just orchestrate on top from an end-to-end perspective and a service perspective? So I think it's that specific. So whatever strategy is, the worst thing is having no strategy, right? Mm-hmm. And people not knowing the strategy is something that is not enabling visibility of how they need to run towards automation. Because when you talk about autonomous network, you're not talking about the program that runs in 1 year and then you're there, it's finished, right? It's kind of you setting the pillars, you run towards the journey, and you just need to be quick, right? You need to be agile, and for that, people need to know what they are doing, where they are doing, and what benefits they want to reap out of each step that they take. So I think it's about that. So having that visibility to the organization and making clear of where they want to work and how they will work.
Thank you. And from your experience, obviously working with a number of telcos, what tends to be their choice, or what do they base their choice on between, if I understand you correctly, having a more centralized approach where you have a tool and you really want everybody to use it, and you perhaps, I don't know, as exec are quite forceful about making sure that everybody uses it. Perhaps you have KPIs even to measure that usage, or you let the own team develop their own strategy on automation and the use of AI depending on their needs, their skills, and what.
I don't really believe in total centralization, right? Because I think people need to first and foremost. So domains of network are very different from each other, right? And so if we enforce a tool or a strategy from core to fixed, that might go wrong, right? So you need those people, they know what they are doing, so you need to give them some freedom and capability and flexibility of running the faster they can, right? So, but of course, you also need to give them some guidelines. So you cannot create mushrooms within your area, right? So you need to stick to some kind of automation. You need to give me APIs for whatever you are doing. So whatever is data insights, whatever is automation, because in the end, I need other domains of network or end-to-end orchestration to be capable of using your capabilities. So I think it's keeping the things tidy in boxes and then just having a big box that goes end to end and orchestrates all of the rest and is capable to interact with it and openly and standardize. So, but we see from different customers, we see different strategy. And like I was saying, there's no ideal strategy, no silver bullet here. It all has to do with how the telcos are also organized, right? And it's the worst thing that you can have is no strategy. So meaning whatever strategy it is, you need to get one and define it and provide clear vision to the organization of what that strategy is.
Thank you. And what about this this point that Matt to me was saying about including automation from the lab, including automation in the lab and thinking automation first? Is that, you would say, something that telcos are aware of?
I think so. I mean, to a certain point, all of the customers we have been talking to and where we work, they have like labs, at least network labs. Of course, they do in terms of cost rationalization. It's not a lab equal to what a production system would be. That would not make sense. But for sure, it needs to have the same capabilities that production has, just a little bit more toned down or tuned down in terms of resources that that lab is using. And I certainly agree. Of course, it's not only to have the network lab, but also the OSS lab, the cognitive operations lab, whatever you want to call it. So whatever is getting KPIs, producing insights, taking actions on actionable insights. So that also needs to be tested out, right? Because in the end, it will command the network. If we want to go autonomous, we need to somehow test what that autonomy will give us as outputs. Otherwise, we'll just put it in production and take actions, and who knows what that algorithms are doing. So it's about very important that we control things like machine learning ops, because we need to control bias from algorithms, deviations. So where will you do that? In production? Yes, but also you need some testing area where you can, at least take 70% out of the risk that you might go into this type of solutions that use autonomy to produce or to reduce operational effort.
I think
Sorry, go ahead.
Just one very short comment. I think nobody would put something on a lab network without testing first. And of course, we have multiple environments. We have like the development environment, we have the staging environment in order to try in different phases. But I would like also to add that with AI, we have like one more option. With the digital twins, we can create a digital twin of the network and test things in a virtual way, which is much more cost effective. Of course, we have also the live testing environment and labs, but now we have more options.
Yeah. Just to complement what Christos and João was saying, at Orange, we are building what I call network integration factory. Is the rollout of 5G in the countries. So we are building this factory with a set of toolings, everything to ease the testing, the validation, the integration of the vendor package in our lab until the pre-production, and then putting in production in the affiliate, depending on their own constraint and so on. So all the stuff, the task regarding validation, integration between the vendor package and our labs is done by a team to ease everything. So this is an automation is the cornerstone of easing everything at every stage, as Christos mentioned. You can split if you have money or some budget to have several environment testing, performance, staging before getting in production. So we are aware about the importance of validating each step before getting in production.
Thanks, Alexis.
Yeah.
I know, João, you've talked a lot, but I just wanted to make sure I have the time to come back to you, because you were going to give us some practical example of the use of Gen AI in specific use cases that you've encountered in your work. So I think some of them were, in fact, you had perhaps touched upon this before, using content summation and natural language prompt, perhaps to help some of the engineers on the ground, but perhaps you had also another example in mind. So if you could give us a little bit of color.
Of course, from the typical summarization, intent recognition, and all of that, even in call centers that we have been doing. For instance, more here on the operational side, something that we've done is, for instance, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of retrieval augmented generation. So it has to do with improving the search performance, improving to get, for instance, an engineer to get information out of vendor documentation, multiple vendor documentation. So that's strategies where you vectorize documentation, then use Gen AI, but it's not being open to the hallucination of Gen AI. Is about extracting bits of information that then you compile that and provide even a link to the actual original source. Other examples, for instance, that we have been achieving is like recommending engineers with proper actions for field service activities. What we want there is to reduce or to improve first-time resolution, rather than having like second, third interventions that cost a lot of money. So we are trying to achieve that. Of course, the idea is to tap into the history of what happened before in the CSP, and there's a lot of history there, and Gen AI can tap into it, categorize it, help us understand what works best and what does not work according to each one of the situations. So that's also another example. Could be, for instance, and that we are doing is automating the risk assessment. So whenever there is a change on the network, so assessing the risk also based on the conditions that you have, the conditions that you had before, what was the categorization made. And so using those capabilities of Gen AI also try to accelerate or to provide that automation of a categorization, prioritization of the risk, and whether you or not, then you can let's say provide a report to people that allow them to decide, and rather than having all of that work to get the data. And last but not least, is a little bit more open, but that's also something that we are trying to do, which is, I think it was referred here, which is I call it democratize access to data insights. It's a big word, but it's about, so it's me as a company and as a business user, I don't want to be dependent from an IT team to build a report, right? What I want is, from a natural language perspective, to talk with the system and say, I need a report saying what is the service experience from my customer X, and I want the system to return the data back to me, whether it is in tabular mode, in a simple KPI, whatever it is. So I think this is the thing that Gen AI needs to work on now is getting that to work.
Okay, thank you. And I suppose another question I would have, especially the first example you gave about using RAG capabilities to summarize content that might come from vendor manuals and so on. To me, because I've never had to implement it at a telco, right? It seems like a low-hanging fruit. It doesn't seem hugely complicated, and it seems like every telco should be doing it, right? It seems to be such a straightforward thing to do, but in practice, actually, how difficult is it? What is the prerequisite for it to be possible? And what's the timeline? How long does it take for a typical telco to be able to do this, at least on, some manuals, perhaps not the entire So if you haven't,
what we do typically is we don't start to like a project where we connect all the pipes and all of that of data or sources. That doesn't make sense, right? For us, what makes sense is that we start with what we call an offline POC data. So get me some data, I'll run through my frameworks and I provide you with some results. And if you like those results, and this first stage could be within 6 to 8 weeks. So testing the data, testing our algorithms, providing outputs, and say, here's what we could achieve. And if we're both happy with the results, then let's go into like let's call it MVP, where we connect you put that solution in place, you deploy it on production grade systems, you connect all the pipes of data, and then that could take like 2 to 3 months. It's like you're saying, it's not let's say it's a low-hanging fruit, and it's not very demanding in terms of time and capabilities, resources from the operators.
May I add something on that?
Sure.
I would say, personally, this is personal opinion, I don't see it as that is a very low-hanging fruit.
Okay.
And when I say that, is there are some things that are, let's say, on the background that you don't foresee in the beginning. And for me, one of the biggest challenges is the data quality and availability. Let me give some examples, because we work with, and we have the experience with some RAG use cases. One example would be some of the documents were, let's say, scanned. So the OCR algorithm didn't work effectively in order to get and vectorize the whole information. We also had very long documents, and then embedding and tagging didn't work as expected. And also one very big challenge was the duplicated and outdated information. Imagine you have a lot of documents that you really want to extract the information, and there is contradictory information inside that. So the model will create maybe an inaccurate answer based on that. So data quality is really important, and we have to make sure that we have the right evaluation methods to make sure that the output is of a very high quality. Because don't get me wrong, yes, João is right, you can really implement it in a very short time, but we really need to focus on what is the level of quality.
Yeah, that's important, and I think also curation of data, right? Because if you cannot put like the latest catalog of IKEA there, so it's otherwise you just get the wrong answers from what you want. So it's for sure there are challenges within the data that you will feed to whatever algorithms, and RAG is no exception. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think I will just ask. We have 1 minute to answer that question, so I will read it out quickly. I will perhaps interpret it a little bit because some of it is cryptic. So most of the discussions, I think, around AI and Gen AI usually center around telco core workloads. Could the panel please share their approach to working with internal B2B organizations? What are the B2B product managers in the organizations currently focused on in relation to AI and Gen AI? So I suppose here it's, selling AI and Gen AI capabilities to the enterprise sector. Does any one of you want to pick that question? So I can certainly give my angle, because we have a Gen AI tracker at STL Partners, on which we have been tracking the public announcements by telcos of how they leverage Gen AI for internal purposes and external purposes. And we've been doing that for the past 3 months. So the first one was in March, I think, then one in July, and another iteration just in November. And we have seen, to answer the question, a strong increase on the Gen AI as a service capabilities by telcos across the globe, actually. So leveraging generative AI capabilities to basically bring new B2B revenues within the telco. So it's not, it's not what every telco offers, but it's certainly more of a focus as a new way of monetizing networks, essentially. And that takes us, sorry.
I can add a few comments on this one, because there are a lot of questions on this one. I would say that it's a mixed bag based on my, let's say, experiences when we were working with the product managers inside the B2B organizations or because everybody has its own, let's say, priorities. And when we're talking about Gen AI and innovation projects, then maybe it's a little bit tricky. Also, I talked about the different mindset. Collaboration is important. So everybody needs to understand across the board that Gen AI is the future, and they need to invest time. And this is really, really important for everybody to understand and actively participate on this one. And I would say that also to link to what João said before, there are all different solutions and initiatives inside, especially big companies like the telcos. It's essential to have like a strategy, a vision where we want to go, and alignment is necessary. Of course, it's always important for everyone to understand, be on the same page, collaborate openly, and always make the right solutions. And if they don't make the right solutions, let's say fail fast, it's always a good thing to do.
Thank you, Christos. I think we'll have to stop here. So thank you very much, Goran. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, João.
Thank you.
Christos.